Okay, so it seems that everybody is here. First salam, then question. MashaAllah. Okay, so first synopsis and then questions, inshallah. Okay, so let's let me get open the exact page that we're on, inshallah. Here we are. Okay, so without further ado, let us begin, inshallah ta'ala. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على من بعث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters, and welcome to part 20 of our Quranic synopsis series, where we go through the Quran juz by juz and covering whatever is going to come up, inshallah, and giving us a good overview of how the Quran is compiled together and how the stories, inshallah, interconnect. Today, inshallah, we are going to go through a number of surahs. So we're going to finish Surah Al-Naml. We are going to then go through Surah Al-Qasas, and then inshallah we will go to Surah Ankabut if possible, inshallah ta'ala, and we'll end on that. Hopefully we can cover all of that. There is a lot to cover. We didn't actually begin Surah Al-Naml yesterday, so it'll be good to start from the beginning, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So Surah Al-Naml is a surah that was revealed pretty much around the time that Surah Al-Shu'ara, the previous surah, was revealed in. And this is on the authority of Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who mentioned that these three surahs, Furqan, Qasas, and An-Naml, Qasas, and Ankabut were revealed around about the same time. And I mentioned previously that it's quite difficult to discern when the Meccan surahs were revealed, and one of the ways in which we can discern that is if a companion can actually tell us the time in which it was revealed in, or there is a particular scenario that some of those verses are associated with. So, Surah Al-Naml, it sort of opens up with a comparison between the qualities of the believers and the qualities of the disbelievers. And that sets up nicely, and it serves as a really, really good introduction for the stories that are about to come in this particular surah. At the beginning, there's going to be the story of Musa and Fir'aun, and then there's going to be the story of Sulaiman and Bilqis, who was the queen of Sheba. And this story is not mentioned anywhere else in the Quran except for in this particular surah. And it's going to be very, very interesting because we're going to see a number of stories after that as well. And it's very much going to be a comparison between the believers, the qualities of the believers, and the qualities of the disbelievers. And we're going to find that the qualities of the disbelievers, their end result is, in a certain direction. And the qualities of the believers, their end result is in the totally opposite direction. And this is expounded and explained in more detail through the stories in which are narrated in this particular surah. So, so the first story is the story of Musa and Fir'aun. And in this particular story, it's again, it's not the story of Musa in its entirety. It's very much a short passage of what is, or what completes his story. And it is a very clear example of how Musa came with a message and revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, similarly to how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to the people of Quraysh. But the arrogance and conceitedness of Fir'aun is what stopped him from following the truth that Musa alayhi salam had come with and obeying the commands of freeing Bani Israel from their bonds of slavery that he had shackled them in. And it was only because of that pride and conceited arrogance that stopped him from doing that. Similarly, that pride and conceited arrogance that the kuffar of Quraysh had stopped them from believing in what the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam had come with. And it shouldn't have been so, because what Musa alayhi salam, also what Fir'aun had, was something that was far greater and immense in terms of proportions, in terms of what he owned, in terms of the people that he had under him, in terms of the power and control that he had, was way more than what the Quraysh had, right? So if Fir'aun is doing that with Musa alayhi salam, you can say that, okay, he has a leg to stand on because he has a lot to lose. But you guys, what are you losing? What is there that you guys have that is so precious, that is going to suddenly slip through your fingers and you're no longer going to have it anymore, right? This is the kind of backdrop. وَجَحَدُوا بِهَا وَاسْتَيْقَنَتْهَا أَنفُسُهُمْ ظُلْمًا وَعُلُوًّا فَانظُرْ كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. So at the end of this particular section of Musa and Fir'aun is that they recognized the truth even when it came to them, but it was only their pride and arrogance that stopped them. They thought that they were too high to believe in something that had come from someone so low. And we mentioned previously that Bani Israel, obviously they were slaves at the time of Fir'aun, and they had been put down at the lowest of the low in terms of the class hierarchy. And obviously the Fir'aun and his people were at the very top. So it was like, this man has come from these people, and these people are the very poorest and lowest of our society. How on earth are we ever going to follow them? Then it goes on to the story of Sulaiman alayhi salam. Now Sulaiman, obviously powerful king and powerful prophet. He was given all of the things that a ruler requires to rule and govern, and he was given more, right? So he was given things like the ability to speak to animals and birds. He was given power over the jinn. He could control the winds. All these, like, epic, legendary stories that we think are fables and things that sort of happen in fairy tales and movies, right? But this was something that was given to Sulaiman in a bygone era. And what's interesting is the contrast between how Sulaiman sort of conducted himself, alayhi salam, with regards to his governance and leadership, despite having things that were sort of manifold in terms of their power and ability, as opposed to what Fir'aun had, and by extension what Quraysh were given, right? So here we have a person, alayhi salam, Sulaiman, who is given all of the things that these two groups have, Fir'aun and his people and Quraysh and whoever follows them. But he's been given that in a multitude of times whatever Quraysh and Fir'aun have by about 1 million, and you probably get close to, or maybe still not there or thereabouts, to what Sulaiman alayhi salam was given. Despite that, there was no pride and conceited arrogance that came forth from Sulaiman that you would expect from a leader like that. Rather, there was a want for the truth and striving for that. And when desires and the temptations of the dunya crept up on him, he would always be one to reject them. Subhanallah. And in this story are things that are not mentioned anywhere else. So Sulaiman is mentioned in other surahs, but this particular aspect of his story is not mentioned anywhere else. So it'll be good to actually go through it, even if it's just in passing, inshallah. But what is Sulaiman Dawood? So Sulaiman, he inherited Dawood. So Dawood had passed away, and Sulaiman inherited what Dawood alayhi salam had left behind. And this doesn't mean that he inherited wealth, because Dawood alayhi salam had other children as well. So if he's talking about wealth being inherited, then it's not specific to Sulaiman, so it's not worth a mention. But what he means here in terms of inheritance is prophethood. What he means here is knowledge. What he means here is the iman, the perspective, the way of living, and the way of understanding life and his ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That was all inherited by Sulaiman from Dawood alayhi salam. وَقَالَ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ عُلِّمْنَا مَنْطِقَ الطَّيْرِ. So he was given the ability to speak or understand the language of the birds and the beasts. وَأُوتِينَا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. And I have been given from everything. إِنَّ هَذَا لَهُوَ الْفَضْلُ الْمُبِينُ. And he attributes that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That this is a blessing, this is a clear blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed me with. وحشر بسليمان جنوده من الجن والإنس والطير فهم يوزعون. And he had been given the power over not just mankind, and not just the birds and the beasts, but also the jinn were under his supervision and under his control. حتى إذا أتوا على واد النمل. So this is the name of the surah, and it's named after this particular verse, An-Naml. An-Naml are the ants, right? A very interesting story as to why this particular event has been narrated here. Of all of the things that Sulaiman has, right? He's speaking to birds. He's controlling all of these armies from the jinn and from mankind, and he has like dominion over his kingdom that like no other king has. And you can narrate any story you want, but you are narrating a story of an ant, an ant in a valley, that are talking to each other, saying, "Beware of Suleiman coming with his army," right? Because they're going to trample all over you and stuff, and they're going to kill you. This is a story that is being related here, right? So it goes on. حتى إذا أتوا على واد النمل قالت نملة يا أيها النمل ادخلوا مساكنكم لا يحطمنكم سليمان وجنوده وهم لا يشعرون. That be wary of Suleiman. So this naml, this ant, he sees Suleiman and his army coming, and he says to his fellow ants, "Oh my fellow ants, go down under the ground so that Suleiman doesn't crush you, him and his army." And despite you sort of and catching you unawares. So Suleiman, he's been given the provision to understand what the birds and beasts are saying, and from that the insects. فتبسم ضاحكا من قولها وقال ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي. Subhanallah. That when he hears the ant speaking to his fellow ants and giving the advice and counsel to his fellow ants. So he smiles and laughs at what he has heard. من قولها وقال ربي أوزعني, and he immediately makes dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the reason why he laughs isn't because out of some form of sort of ridicule or you guys are ants and you guys are scared or something like that. No, not at all. What he's laughing about is the blessing in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given, the amazement. When you're so amazed and all you can do is just laugh, right? And someone's asking you, why are you laughing? And it's like, it's amazing, right? So that's kind of the reaction of Suleiman. Like he's laughing in absolute amazement that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him this blessing, that he can actually hear the ants in their sort of under the ground speaking to each other and giving themselves advice. فتبسم ضاحكا من قولها, and immediately, instead of sort of like having this like, I can understand animals and beasts like Dr. Dolittle, and I am like, I'm the the leader of all my people and so on and so forth, and bragging about these sorts of things. Instead, he turns to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and makes dua, and he says that allow me to thank you for the blessings that you have given me, نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي, and on my parents too, subhanallah. وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه, and that I do righteous actions that you are pleased with. وأدخلني برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين, and allow me to be amongst the righteous servants of your servants with your mercy. I mean, what a beautiful dua to say. And someone was asking yesterday about how to cure arrogance. This is a perfect dua for that. وتفقد الطير فقال ما لي لا أرى الهدهد, right? And this is another story. This is the story of the hoopoe. The hoopoe is a type of bird that kind of looks like a woodpecker, right? You never see a hoopoe around here anyway, so who's going to know what a hoopoe is? But it's called the hudhud. Anyway, the hudhud is a type of bird, right? So this is another story that is narrated about the life of Suleiman. And it's a very strange story because it's something that seems insignificant. He's basically, the story goes that the bird from amongst his junud, from amongst his soldiers, goes missing, right? So he asks, where is this bird? If he doesn't come with a valid excuse as to why he's gone missing, then I will, punish him with a grievous punishment, right? And what that wants to show is that the ability that Suleiman had over his, over his creation, over his dominion, right? Over Allah's creation, sorry, and over his dominion and his, what he was ruling, was absolute. There was not a speck of dust, nor an animal or an insect that crawled in the ground, except that he knew what was going on in his kingdom. And yet, despite that, there's still not that arrogance and that conceitedness there that is there in the life of Fir'aun, or in the story of Fir'aun and Musa, and the story of Quraysh and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So anyway, لأعذبنه عذابا شديدا أو لأذبحنه أو ليأتيني بسلطان مبين. So I'm either going to punish him, a grievous punishment, or he's going to come to me with a valid excuse. فمكث غير بعيد فقال أحط بما لم تحط به وجئتك من سبأ بنبأ يقين. That I have seen what you haven't seen, right? And I know what you don't know, right? And this is outside of your kingdom. So everything in your kingdom you may know, but outside of your kingdom, I have seen something that is worth telling you. And I have come from the people of Sheba, and I have come with some great news. So he goes on to narrate what he had seen. إني وجدت امرأة تملكهم وأوتيت من كل شيء ولها عرش عظيم. That I have come from a people that I have found who is ruling them a woman, and she has been given, the ability over all things. So it's not exactly like you, but she has power. وَلَهَا عَرْشٌ عَظِيمٌ, and she has an incredible throne. And this is either literal, she has a massive throne, or it means that she has power and strength over her people, and she has a solid rule over them. وَجَدْتُهَا وَقَوْمَهَا يَسْجُدُونَ لِلشَّمْسِ. But the problem is that these are people who worship the sun. من دون الله, other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَزَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَعْمَالَهُم, and this is something that shaitan has made beautiful for them. فَصَدَّهُمْ عَنِ السَّبِيلِ فَهُمْ لَا يَهْتَدُونَ. So shaitan has made this thing beautiful for them and has stopped them from the way of guidance. So they have no way of recognizing what is true from what is false. ألا يسجدوا لله الذي يخرج الخبأ في السماوات والأرض ويعلم ما تخفون وما تعلنون. This is like sort of an explanation of what it means to be guided. الله لا إله إلا هو رب العرش العظيم, and there is a sajda here. قال سننظر أصدقت أم كنت من الكاذبين. So after this hudhud, this is all the hoopoe telling him what's going on in terms of what he's seen and what they're doing in Sheba. And Sulaiman is like, okay, cool. Let us see if you are truthful or whether you are from the liars. اذهب بكتابي هذا فألقيه إليهم ثم تول عنهم فانظر ماذا يرجعون. Take this, a letter from me that is addressed to them. Right? So he's telling the hudhud, he's telling the hoopoe to do this, right? So the hoopoe takes this letter and he goes to Bilqis with this letter to see what is the reaction that is going to take place thereafter. And the idea was that Sulaiman wanted them to be guided, and he wanted to give them da'wah, and he wanted them to be upon tawheed, so that they take what is halal from Allah and they take what is haram from Allah and not from their own selves and their own desires. قالت يا أيها الملأ إني ألقي إلي كتاب كريم. So she says to her people, "Oh my people, verily I have been sent a letter, and this letter is something that is quite beautiful. إنه من سليمان وإنه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. It is verily from Sulaiman, and it begins with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And this is the only place in the Qur'an where Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is actually an ayah from the Qur'an. It is at the head of every surah, but is not considered an ayah from that surah. Rather, it is just an opening, if you like, a way to begin that particular surah, and a way to differentiate between the surah before it and the surah after it. So it comes as a fawasil or a fasl, as a differentiating sentence, and it's taken from here. إنه من سليمان وإنه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألا تعلوا علي وأتوني مسلمين. Right, and within its contents is do not لا تعلوا علي, meaning do not rise above me. And what that means is, because he's a prophet of Allah, do not rise above the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do not rise above tawheed with your shirk. Do not associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأْتُونِي مُسْلِمِينَ, and come to me submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, submitting to his will and believing in his message. قالت يا أيها الملأ أفتوني في أمري ما كنت قاطعة أمرا حتى تشهدون. So she turns to her people, right, her advisors, her ministers, and said, look, I'm not going to make a decision without you guys. Let me know what you guys think. قالوا نحن أولو قوة وأولو بأس شديد. That we are people who have a lot of strength, and we are very, very inept in warfare. So we can defend ourselves. So if Sulaiman wants to bring it with his people, we are ready for him. وَالْأَمْرُ إِلَيْكِ فَانْظُرِي مَاذَا تَأْمُرِينَ. But this affair is with you. The decision wholly lies in your control. Whatever you decide, we will go with that. So they were, a smart people. They weren't people who were arrogant, and they weren't taken with deceit through the power that they had, even though they had some. Again, a massive contrast between the stories that we've seen before with regards to those who have been in power, even from those who have disbelieved. So here we have a disbelieving people, and despite them having disbelieved, it seems as if they have inherited that disbelief from generation after generation after generation. But if they were given a chance to believe, they would certainly take that opportunity. If they were given a chance at guidance, they would certainly take it by the scruff of the neck. قالت إن الملوك إذا دخلوا قرية أفسدوها وجعلوا عزة أهلها أذلة. Verily, the kings, when they enter into a town or a city or a place or a country, أفسدوها وجعلوا أعزة أهلها أذلة. That they destroy it from top to bottom, and they make it ruinous, right? So they spread their tyranny and they spread their corruption, and all they want is more power, right? This is the general tendency of how dominion and kingship works. When you have power, it's not that you're content with that power to serve those who you are leading. Rather, what you want is more power. Who's the person next to me? Is he a threat to me? If he is a threat to me, I'm gonna take him out. Right? And even if he's not a threat to me, if he's weak, I'm still gonna take him out so I can have dominion over his land. Right? This is just the natural, not even natural. This is just the way sort of shaitan works with regards to power and the fuel for it. So she's describing how kings are in general. وكذلك يفعلون, and this is how they do. وإني مرسلة إليهم بهدية فناظرة بما يرجع المرسلون. So I'm going to send to this king Sulaiman, I'm going to send to him a gift, right? And it's differed as to what that gift was. There's nothing really authentic about what that gift was, but she sent a gift anyway. But she wanted to test Sulaiman as to what he would do with this gift. Is he going to take it so he's going to be easily bribed with things of the dunya, right? You give him a little gift and he calms down. It's cool, okay. I can get some things off this king or this queen, right? Or is he going to be those who are not willing to accept gifts, rather they have a message to uphold and they are going to see that message through? And is he really a prophet, or is he just one of the kings like those other kings, the tyrannical kings that just want extra rule and extra dominion? فلما جاء سليمان قال أتمدونني بمال فما آتاني الله خير أو فما آتاني الله خير مما آتاكم بل أنتم بهديتكم تفرحون. So Sulaiman, he responds that, have you come to me, are you extending to me wealth from the dunya? Rather, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me is far greater than anything that he has given you and anything that you could possibly give me, right? So a proper messenger, a person who is really in the service of Allah and his message and in the service of his people. So he's not worried and he doesn't care about what he's receiving and what he's getting or what he's losing. He just cares about upholding the message and upholding those morals that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted him. ارجع إليهم فلنأتينهم بجنود لا قبل لهم بها. Return to them, for verily we are going to come to them with an army that they have absolutely no possibility of ever overcoming. وَلَنُخْرِجَنَّهُمْ مِنْهَا أَذِلَّةً وَهُمْ صَاغِرُونَ. And we will take them out from that town or that city, and they will be from those who are disgraced. So these are tactics that Sulaiman is using. قال يا أيها الملأ أيكم يأتيني بعرشها قبل أن يأتوني مسلمين. So he already knows that they're going to come and they're going to submit, but he wants to test the Queen of Sheba. So he asks, who from amongst my people is going to bring her throne to me before she arrives at my kingdom? So there's a jinn called Ifrit, right? And he's actually mentioned by name here. قال عفريت من الجن أنا آتيك به. Now there's loads of sort of fables about who Ifrit is and what was he like and the things that he could do and stuff like that. But he was one of the top generals from amongst the jinn folk, and he had power like no other jinn had. So he said that I can bring it to you before you stand up from the seat that you are sitting in. Meaning that Sulaiman would sit down and he would sit with his chief ministers and his advisors and and he would supervise what is happening in his kingdom. Whatever needs to be taken care of, he takes care of it, and whatever people need help with, he helps them with, and so on and so forth. And once he's done with all of that, he goes. As soon as he's done with all of those things and he goes, that's before that time comes, Ifrit would have come with the throne of Bilqis. وَإِنِّي عَلَيْهِ لَقَوِيٌّ أَمِينٌ. Verily I am strong and able to do that. قَالَ الَّذِي عِنْدَهُ عِلْمٌ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ. So there is a person who knew the scripture, right? His name is Asif, and there's a lot of talk as to who he was in his relation to Sulaiman. But anyway, he had knowledge of the book. So he said, أَنَا آتِيكَ بِهِ قَبْلَ أَنْ يَرْتَدَّ إِلَيْكَ طَرْفُكَ. That I can come with this throne before يَرْتَدَّ إِلَيْكَ طَرْفُكَ. That basically means that before your sight returns to you. So whatever you're looking at, before you are able to be able to look at that, even if it's at a distance of the horizon, I will be able to come to you with this throne. And some say you can translate that as the blinking of an eye. Before your eye blinks, I can bring you the throne of Bilqis. فلما رآه مستقرا عنده قال هذا من فضل ربي ليبلوني أشكر أم أكفر. Right? And so again, this is like a really sort of like it's a miraculous story. It's something that is out there. He's talking to birds, right? He's talking to ants, or he can hear the ants. And now he's, there's an amazing thing has happened where a throne has come to him, right? So all these, like, what we would deem as sort of miraculous, outrageous things that have happened that don't happen normally and actually can't happen, even now, right? These are the stories that are being narrated. And in each story, Sulaiman is showing this sort of this nobility and this humility with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when this happens and the throne comes to him, he says, this is from the blessings of my Lord, and he wishes to test me whether I will be thankful or whether I will be ungrateful. Ajib, subhanallah. وَمَنْ شَكَرَ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ. And whoever thanks, then he thanks only for himself. وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ رَبِّي غَنِيٌّ كَرِيمٌ. And whoever is ungrateful and disbelieves and turns his back on the blessings of his Lord, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is rich and most generous. He doesn't need the thanks of the thankful. قال نكروا لها عرشها. So he told his people to make the throne ambiguous. So change it, decorate it, cover it in a way that she's not going to recognize that it's her throne. So we will see that whether ننظر أتهتدي أم تكون من الذين لا يهتدون. We will see that if she is able to recognize her throne, or if she is not going to be from the ones who can recognize her throne. Meaning that is she smart? Is she clever? Or is she someone who is at the behest and the whim of her people? If her people order her to do something, then she will do it. Rather, is she someone who thinks for herself? فَلَمَّا جَاءَتْ قِيلَ أَهَكَذَا عَرْشُكَ. So it is said to her when she came to Sulaiman, right? So fast forward, she comes to Sulaiman, she arrives at this place, and it is said to her, is this your throne? What do you think of this throne? قالت كأنه هو. I think it's my throne, I think it is. وأوتينا العلم من قبلها وكنا مسلمين. And we have been given knowledge of that before her, and we are verily from amongst the Muslims. So this was a test in which she passed. So she was able to recognize her throne. وصدها ما كانت تعبد من دون الله. So then Sulaiman had, conversations ensued between him and Bilqis, and she recognized the truth for what it was, and he managed to stop Sad, right? He managed to put a barrier between her and her disbelief, and allowed her to recognize the truth that Sulaiman had come with, alayhi salam. إنها كانت من قوم كافرين. She was before from a people who disbelieved. قيل لها أدخل الصرح فلما رأته حسبته لجة وكشفت عن ساقيها قال إنه صرح ممرد من قوارير قالت ربي إني ظلمت نفسي وأسلمت مع سليمان لله رب العالمين. Right? And this is another one of those miraculous, outrageous stories that is being narrated as in part of the story of Sulaiman. And it is the story of the castle, right? So after all this has happened, Sulaiman alayhi salam takes her to his palace. And his palace is made of crystal, right? And glass, and it's all like sort of transparent and translucent. And over the ground in which this castle was built on, it was a river that flowed. And within it were fish of many types. So when they were walking towards the pathway to the castle, as they entered into the castle, she figured that the floor was actually water, and she had to sort of wade through it in order to get to the other side, right? But really what it was crystal, and it was so see-through that it was as if it was nothing there. So she lifted up her garment that she was wearing, وَكَشَفَتْ عَنْ سَاقَيْهَا, and her ankles and her lower leg became apparent, right? And when she recognized that, قال إنه صرح ممرد من قوارير. So Sulaiman told her what it was made of. Like, don't worry, it's not actually water. It's crystal and glass. That's just see-through. قالت ربي إني ظلمت نفسي وأسلمت مع سليمان لله رب العالمين. She said, verily, I have wronged myself, and I have submitted with Sulaiman for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that concludes the story of Sulaiman. And what that end story is like sort of, firstly, it's a rebuttal to those who made up these crazy stories about Sulaiman and Bilqis and what happened between them. There were a lot of sort of I'd say, saucy stories that were made up in the past, and this was a way to rebut those stories. That no, look, it's not like that, and it's not what you guys are saying of lewdness that came from Sulaiman or Bilqis. Rather, there was a lot of ihtiram, there was a lot of respect between the two, and mutual respect, and this is the reality of what actually took place. And another thing is that despite Sulaiman being given a palace full of crystals, his main aim wasn't to take dominion over the land of Bilqis, because he returned her back to Sheba in Yemen, and she returned back to her kingship and her leadership. And it's not like Sulaiman came down and he took over the whole land. Rather, all he wanted for her to become was to become Muslim. And so this is shown through all of the different ways in which, or the different instances that happened through the life or through the story of Sulaiman, and all these different instances that happened with the ants, with the jinn, with Bilqis as well. Okay, then there's the story of Salih that comes straight after. وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا إِلَى ثَمُودَ أَخَاهُمْ صَالِحًا. This goes on for a number of ayat, and in it, it talks about what's precarious about this particular story, or this part of the story, is وَكَانَ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ تِسْعَةُ رَهْدٍ يُفْسِدُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا يُصْلِحُونَ. So there were a group of nine groups of people, and they would spread corruption in the land. قالوا تقاسموا بالله لنبيتنه وأهله ثم لنقولن لوليه ما شهدنا مهلك أهله وإنا لصادقون. That they're going to say, these group of nine, there's 9 tribes or 9 groups of people, whatever they were, they came together and they agreed that, look, let's all kill Saleh. Just like the Quraysh had come together and agreed amongst the different tribes, because no one tribe wanted to be responsible for the death of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so that Bani Hashim and its Hulafa and its tribes that have allegiance with Bani Hashim could then, take from whoever tribe attacked the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and killed him. Rather, if they all got together, then Bani Hashim and whoever was in allegiance with Bani Hashim would not be able to, fight against and take from all of the different tribes together if they had all grouped and allied one to another. So this is the same mindset that the people of Saleh had with regards to Saleh. So it's almost like getting the Prophet ﷺ in gear as to what's going to happen in a couple of years' time when the hijrah is about to start and they really make plans to actually kill you. And then there's some questions posed to the disbelievers towards the end of the surah as to, look, all of this stuff has come to you, right? And all of this stuff is going to happen to you. You see these stories. Do you not recognize, your own disbelief? Do you not recognize the situation of your own arrogance and pride and your own egos taking over and taking control of you? Recognize these facts. These people who were before you were given far greater than what you have, yet you still are arrogant in your disbelief. And then there's some sort of horrors of the Yawm al-Qiyamah towards the end. وَيَوْمَ يُنْفَخُ فِي الصُّورِ فَفَزِعَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا مَنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ. So the day in which the trumpet is going to be blown and everybody is going to fall to their deaths, and then the trumpet is blown again and everybody is going to be risen up for the day of judgment. And then some parting advice for the Prophet ﷺ to recite the Qur'an, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to be from amongst those who have submitted just like those who came before. وَلَقُولِ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ سَيُرِيكُمْ آيَاتِهِ فَتَعْرِفُونَها. So say alhamdulillah, give praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For verily He is going to show you His signs just as He showed those from before. That concludes Surah Al-Naml, and then we go on to Surah Al-Qasas, the stories or the completed stories. Inshallah, let's take a break and let's see what's happening in the world of Zoom and YouTube, inshallah. Okay, is it sunnah in wudu to use one handful of water to rinse the mouth and nose 3 times together, or is it sunnah to rinse them separately 3 times mouth and 3 times nose? Both are considered the sunnah. Both are fine to do, inshallah ta'ala. If you do each of them separately, you have fulfilled the sunnah, and if you do each of them together, so once in the mouth and nose at the same time, mouth and nose at the same time, with one sort of one handful of water, then that is also fulfilling the sunnah, inshallah. Sabi is asking, in the Quran it says we passed Dawood's knowledge to Sulaiman. Does that mean Dawood also possessed the power of speaking to animals and jinns? That's a good question. I don't think so. I don't think that was something that Sulaiman had inherited from Dawood alayhi salam. I think that was Sulaiman was given that specifically, and that was a specific blessing that was given to Sulaiman alone. Let's have a look at some more questions. So Ayman, let's deal with Ayman's question. Does playing violent games break your fast? No, it doesn't. I know you're not supposed to. No, Sulaiman is laughing there. I know you're not supposed to play these type of games, but it's good to increase my knowledge. It is very good to increase your knowledge. But no, violent games don't break your fast at all. Those things that break your fast are known, and there's anything that you intake or anything that you do which is considered meeting of the two sectors. Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. Does Laylatul Qadr end at the start of Fajr or at dawn? Aren't they the same things? The start of Fajr and dawn are the same things, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I may be, but Fajr and dawn, the start of Fajr and dawn are the same things. Okay, so Laylatul Qadr, it ends at both of those times, inshallah. Okay, how do bleeding gums affect your fast? Probably should start flossing more regularly. Bleeding gums. Okay, so the blood, if if your blood, if you do bleed, if you do end up sort of intaking that, which is likely going to be the case because you first recognize that the taste of blood in your mouth, then you spit it out. Your fast is considered makruh in many of the madhahib because of the mere fact that the bleeding did take place in your mouth. If you haven't taken it in or intaken anything and you're certain of that 100%, then your fast is still intact. But it may be mustahab to redo that fast just in case. Is there any discussion or details on the jinn that wanted to bring the throne of Sheba? Could the animals or jinn disobey Prophet Sulaiman? So they could. They did have the ability to disobey Sulaiman. But Sulaiman had such a control over them that they weren't able to do that. It wasn't in their power. And it was only after Sulaiman had passed away were they able to go back to doing what they used to do before. But Sulaiman was given such a control and such a dominion over them that even if they wanted to disobey Sulaiman and his commands, they weren't able to. And obviously we saw that through the hudhud, right, the hoopoe, just by him being sort of missing from amongst the ranks of his people. He was, I'm gonna sort you out. And it's just the bird. It's the bird flying around in the air. SubhanAllah. Okay. Why was magic brought down by angels and taught? Is it not forbidden? This is going back to the story in Surah Al-Baqarah about the angels that were sent to Babylon. Why were they sent down by angels? As obviously a test for mankind, whether they would take it on. Obviously they were told not to learn this stuff, but they still went and learned it. They were told not to take it and not to use it, and they still went and used it. So it was a test like every other test that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sets for mankind. Just like he had tested Adam alayhi salam in Jannah with regards to the tree, and you can't really commit a sin in Jannah, right? You're supposed to be free of sin in Jannah. So all of this stuff is already preordained by Allah and is always there as a test for mankind. So whenever the question of why, that's always the generic answer. And obviously what those tests are, we can go into more detail with regards to each scenario, inshallah. Is the name Bilqis in the Qur'an? It's not in the Qur'an, no. Is it allowed to kill pests, ants, etc. from coming into your house? Is castration of farm animals, pets, caging them in small spaces, cruelty or permitted? Loaded questions, Moeen. Okay, so I said I was looking forward to them, but now I'm kind of regretting what I said. Okay, so to kill pests and sort of ants and stuff. Okay, so the word pests, you kind of put it there in and of itself. So when they come into your home and stuff like that, there is some scope to use these sorts of pesticides and stuff like that in order to sort of get them out, because you can't sort of shoo them gather them all together and put them outside. Sometimes they're sort of buried deep within your wall and stuff like that, and they can cause a lot of harm with regards to your food and that sort of thing. So yeah, it is permitted in those instances. The castration of farm animals and pets. Castration is something that has been done for a very, very long time, for centuries and centuries on end. It's not considered cruelty. What they would do is they would get the strongest from amongst the animals in terms of the males in order to mate with the females in the herd, so that they will have the dominant genes, and the herd will sort of only produce strong animals. So that's been done for centuries. So I'm not aware that that's something that is considered cruelty to animals. Where was Iblis in all of this? Was Sulaiman alayhi salam able to communicate with him? Were jinns more fearful of Sulaiman or Iblis? Lastly, is Ihliq, the jinn, still alive? Ihliq, or do you mean Ifrit? Okay, so Iblis, so Sulaiman had dominion over a kingdom. Outside of that kingdom, there were other kingdoms. So the Queen of Sheba had a kingdom as well. So Sulaiman alayhi salam, he had dominion over a group of people and a group of the jinn. That doesn't necessarily mean he had dominion over absolutely everything. So Iblis was still there, but he was elsewhere, away. Anywhere that Sulaiman was, Iblis was somewhere else. Sulaiman was able to communicate with the jinn, and had he communicated with the shaitan, he would have been able to communicate with. Were jinns more fearful of Sulaiman or Iblis? They were certainly more fearful of Sulaiman. Is Ifrit still alive? I'm not sure. Probably, but I'm not sure. What is Islam's view on unnatural relationships and the activities normalized such activities in schools for young children? Unnatural relationships, like with ghosts and jinn and stuff. Muin, mashallah. He's really going for the pressing questions, isn't he? Okay, there's quite a few on Zoom. Let me jump over to YouTube and see what's happening there, inshallah, so that we're not neglectful of all of our brethren who are listening to us, inshallah. So Noreen is asking. Noreen, mashallah, good to see you on board. If charity is given from mine and hubby's joint account, does it still count towards my individual charity, or do I have to give independently? Yeah, no, it's whatever you intend. So if you guys are both giving from a shared account, and you say like, okay, half of this or this amount of this money that we're giving is mine, and this amount is yours, and you guys give it all together, then that is whatever you intended, inshallah. But your joint account, I imagine that both of you guys are putting into it, unless hubby's doing all of the payments and you're just giving all of the charity. Subhanallah. But I imagine that you guys are both putting into that account, if that's what the joint account is supposed to be. So both of your wealth is going to be shared, inshallah. Wa alaikum salam, Ayan. I see you're in the house as well, mashallah. Also, second question, are people who suffer mental health illness held accountable for their shortcomings on Judgment Day? Are they bestowed Jannah due to the special dispensation? They are not held accountable for the things that they do while they are suffering. Obviously, there are gradients to mental health and severities to it. So it's not all just sort of like, okay, if you're diagnosed with a mental health condition, rufi'a anqa al-qalam, you're not going to be held accountable for anything that you do. So it's free reign, do what you like. But sort of the severe conditions, certainly those who are considered not sort of able to discern what they are doing and how they are doing it, they are not in control of their actions and their reactions, those sorts of people, they are considered to be those who are not of sound mind, and anybody who's not of sound mind is not held accountable for the things that they do. Ayan is asking, why do Muslim men wear topis? Mashallah. So this is a traditional thing that we've done for many years and many centuries, and it's not just us that wear topis. It's pretty much all of the other ancient cultures. It's only in modernity where we have taken off our topis and gone bareheaded. So it was seen as a sign of respect, a sign of maturity. Young men would not wear a turban or a topi. They would just sort of like go barehead. So it was a sign of immaturity. When you're still young, you do what you like. But when you are mature and when you're a man, one of the things that signify your manhood is the covering of the head. And this has lasted through generation after generation after generation. So it's not something that sort of like has a particular religious significance, even though the Prophet ﷺ would wear one, but it was something that was a customary of the time. So that is why Muslim men wear topis. That is why other people wear topis. That is why I'm wearing a topi, because I like to cover my head. Alhamdulillah. So I hope that answers the question. I'm not sure of the history of the topi too well, but inshallah, if anybody ever writes a book about that, I'll be sure to read it and let you know. Ant. Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. Question, please. Are we allowed to eat calamari? MashaAllah. Calamari is an exquisite dish. MashaAllah. Very, very tasty. And it is permissible to eat that. There is some difference of opinion with regards to what is permissible from the seafood, because some scholars are of the view that anything that comes out of the sea, is permissible to eat and drink, whether that is land-based and sea-based, or whether it is just sea-based creatures. So calamari is of a type of squid, land-based and sea-based. So it's like, okay, it's not permissible because it's not wholly from the sea. That's where that kind of thinking comes from. But I am sort of Maliki in my persuasion. So calamari is perfectly halal for myself, and I love it. Okay, let's come back to the questions. Let's come back to the questions a little bit later, inshallah. Hopefully we'll have some time at the end of Surah Al-Qasas. If not, then we'll carry on those questions for tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala. So Surah Al-Qasas. Let's have a look and see what's going on in Surah Al-Qasas. Surah Al-Qasas was revealed around the same period as the previous surahs, as we mentioned before, right? So Shu'ara, Naml, and Qasas, they were kind of revealed in the same order and around about the same time, which is sort of the middle time of the prophethood in Mecca. So around the 6th year, 7th year of prophethood. So 6 or 7 years before the actual hijrah took place. And within it, we're going to sort of expound upon Musa's story quite a bit. And the angle in which we're going to take with regards to Musa's story is what happened before prophethood, right? So what we've seen in Surah Al-Naml and Surah Al-Shu'ara is what happened after he received the revelation and he's gone to Fir'aun, right? In Shu'ara, he was afraid to go to Fir'aun because he had killed someone previously, and he was afraid to be held accountable for that. And in Surah Al-Naml, it was when he actually went to Fir'aun he was shown up for it. And in this surah, we're going to see the events that took place before revelation and how that had an effect on Musa alayhi salam and his life. And the purpose of this particular story is actually laid out in the beginning ayat. نَتْلُو عَلَيْكَ مِن نَبَإِ مُوسَى وَفِرْعَوْنَ بِالْحَقِّ لِقَوْمٍ يُؤْمِنُونَ. We are going to tell you, O Messenger of Allah, the story of Musa in absolute truth, exactly as it happened and how it happened. And this is specifically for those who believe. So only those who believe are actually going to recognize the story and believe it for what it is. إِنَّ فِرْعَوْنَ عَلَى فِي الْأَرْضِ وَجَعَلَ أَهْلَهَا شِيَعًا يَسْتَضْعِفُ طَائِفَةً مِّنْهُمْ يُذَبِّحُ أَبْنَاءَهُمْ وَيَسْتَحْيِي نِسَاءَهُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ مِنَ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. So he was a tyrant and the worst of all tyrants, and he would do some absolutely heinous things to the men, the women, and even the children from amongst Bani Israel. And he was those who were proud and arrogant, and his pride of his took him to levels which no one had gone to before. وَنُرِيدُ أَن نَّمُنَّ عَلَى الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ أَئِمَّةً وَنَجْعَلَهُمُ الْوَارِثِينَ. That we want to show our favor to those who have been weakened in the earth. So we want to show our favor to Bani Israel, and وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ أَئِمَّةً وَنَجْعَلَهُمُ الْوَارِثِينَ. And we want to make them leaders. We want to cultivate in them characteristics that will make them good leaders, and we want to appoint them as leaders and allow them to inherit what the tyrants leave behind, right? So, and it's only through suffering and through difficulty that your character is truly developed. If everything is good in your life, you're not going to learn much. But when you go through hardships and difficulties, you are honing in your skills that you learn when you are at ease, right? And when things are good, and you are applying them and disciplining yourself and pushing yourself to the very limits when you're going through hardship, and that cultivates your character so that when you are back in times of ease, you are a a better person, right? A more developed person. So when you go through difficulties, and you are weakened in this world, and then after that you are put in a position of power, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows his favor upon you, you have that character that you have cultivated of leadership, that you can govern with justice and with the truth. وَنُمَكِّنَ لَهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَنُرِيَ فِرْعَوْنَ وَهَامَانَ وَجُنُودَهُمَا مِنْهُمْ مَا كَانُوا يَحْذَرُونَ. And so that we can show Fir'aun and Haman. Haman was like the treasurer or the architect of Fir'aun. So he was the one who sort of like, built the pyramids and stuff like that. Big man in society. And this is the reason why we are going to do this, is to show Fir'aun and Haman whatever they were fearful of happening, that is what is going to happen. Whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed, that is what is ultimately going to come to pass. No matter how much you fear it, no matter how much you try to run away from it, no matter how much you try to enact your tyranny over people in order to avoid the inevitable, what's prophesied and going to happen, you will not get away from it. And this is an introduction. And obviously, what Fir'aun and Haman are afraid of happening is that a child from Bani Israel that was prophesied to them is going to come up and overthrow them from their dominion of their kingdom. And obviously, that's when they decided to murder all of the children of Bani Israel and sort of rape their women, so that the only people that will come out from their progeny were Fara'ina. But anyway, this is kind of a prelude, an introduction, just to say, it's almost as if to say to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, look, whatever's going to happen to you in terms of hardship, these hardships are there to cultivate your character, and these hardships are there for Allah's favor to come to you, right? And when Allah's favor comes to you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause you to inherit what these tyrants that you are facing with, to inherit what they leave behind. And once you inherit that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to show them the truth of which they were deniers, right? This is what's going to be the ultimate end of affairs, right? And this was going to happen to you, O Messenger of Allah. So take from the story of Musa counsel and heed it wisely. Also, it's going to set out in the story of Musa alayhi salam things that are going to happen, which are also going to be beneficial for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his own journey as well. So it starts with verse number 7 and it goes all the way to verse number 43 about the story of Musa alayhi salam and what happens here. So let's go through it just a little bit, inshallah, because it's told here like it's not told anywhere else. So Musa alayhi salam, he's a small child, right? So it starts off when he's just a little baby, and his mother. It's revealed to his mother that when all this stuff is going on, that Fir'aun is going out and he's killing all of the children from Bani Israel, to lay Musa in that cradle, and that cradle goes upstream, and the miracles that happen with that story. His sister accompanies that cradle and walks with it on the banks of the river as that cradle is going up to the house of Fir'aun, and it is picked up by none other than the wife of Fir'aun, whose name is, what is the name of the wife of Fir'aun? Hook me up with that, guys, if you truly are those who are knowledgeable. So a bit of trivia for you guys there. What is the name of the wife of Fir'aun? So the wife of Fir'aun, she picks up the baby and brings it in to Fir'aun and says, look, Allah has blessed us with a child. Let's take it in. Let's take it as a child for us. Let's adopt it, and so on and so forth. And obviously, Musa's mother was afraid of losing Musa alayhi salam, but his mother was reassured that Musa will return to him. And the way in which he was going to return to him was that Asiya, mashallah, all you guys, sharp as a knife, alhamdulillah. Okay, so the way in which Musa alayhi salam was going to return to his mother was that he was going to reject every single wet nurse that was going to come to him, right? So he wasn't going to suckle off anybody. And obviously Asiya hasn't given birth to Musa, so she hasn't developed the necessary things in her body in order for her to allow her to produce milk for Musa. So she's trying to find wet nurses that will do this for her, and she can't find a wet nurse for her. So her sister, who is kind of waiting outside at the gates to see what's happening, ends up they're exhausted of trying to find wet nurses within the palace. So they go to try to find wet nurses outside in the city, and lo and behold, the first person that they come into contact with is the sister of Musa alayhi salam. And they ask her, look, we're looking for wet nurses. Do you know anybody? She was like, look, I know the perfect person. And she goes to her mother to come in and be the wet nurse of Musa alayhi salam. So subhanAllah, the reunited there and then. So amazing. And then it goes on to sort of talk about the dispute that happened between a person from Bani Israel and a person from the people of Fir'aun. And Musa came and he hit that person and he ended up killing him by accident, because he was only supposed to sort of break up the fight. And obviously Musa was really, really strong and didn't recognize his own strength. So he ended up killing this guy. And when he killed him, he got really, really scared. The next day he goes out from the city again. And this happened at a time when Musa was a lot older. And he was questioning the practices of Fir'aun and his people with regards to the slavery that he had enacted and brought about for the people of Bani Israel. So he was like, and he recognized that he was actually from the people of Bani Israel as well. He wasn't from the people of Fir'aun. He realized that he was adopted and so on and so forth. So he's like, you know, he's got this conflicting thing in his heart about, look, these are technically my people. Although I know I've been brought up with you guys and you guys are my family. These are my people, man. Like these are, and the way you're treating them is not right. Anyway, even if they weren't my people, it's not the way you should be treating anybody. So he had this conflict in his heart. So he would go out and he would, you know, see how people were doing and make sure, you know, they got food and they got extra, you know, he was being a good Samaritan. And the people recognized this, and you know, they would think good of him and hail him as a bringer of peace. So anyway, this happened, right? And ended up killing this guy. And so suddenly, like it was a big thing for him, and he got scared. And so he went out the next day doing his thing as he normally does. And then he sees the same guy who asked him for help yesterday and ended up killing his opponent, asking him for help again, right? So he goes up to the guy and, you know, is breaking up, you know, the fight. And when he sees him calling him, he's like, you know, verily you're a troublemaker, right? Or like, I only see you as someone who's causing trouble. He recognizes that this guy is going to put me in a lot of, a difficult situation. But anyway, he goes to help him, and he doesn't go to hit him. Doesn't go to hit his opponent this time. Rather, he just lays his hand on him, and it said to him that, look, you know, do you want to kill me just like you killed the person yesterday, and so on and so forth. And then it is said to him that, look, you know, Fir'aun is now looking for you and his people. They're looking for you now, right? And they're looking to harm you. Because they recognized that Musa was, you know, leaning towards Bani Israel, recognizing his roots and stuff like that. So, you know, we got to get this guy. We've got to nib this guy in the bud before, you know, it gets worse. So Musa alayhi salam ends up vacating Egypt at the time and going to Madian. And when he went to Madian, he left with nothing, right? And it's said, like in the traditions, that he left literally with nothing, only the clothes on his back. And he didn't have any shoes, so he was wearing sandals, and they quickly sort of wore out. So he was barefoot. He didn't have any food. He didn't have any money. He had absolutely nothing with him, only the clothes on his back. SubhanAllah. And then we get to, in the story of Madian, to the place where he sees the well, right? And all the shepherds are there with their flocks, and they are taking water out from the well. And there's two women there who are with their sheep, but they are not going close to the well. So you know, he goes up to them. He's like, you know, what's up? And why are you guys sitting here on the side? Why don't you water your or give your livestock something to drink? And they were like, look, we can't, because those guys are there, and you know, our father he's an old man, so he can't actually come out and do it for us. You know, we're just, you know, meager women, and we can't actually do the stuff that our father could have done had he been well. فسقى لهما ثم تولى إلى الظل فقال رب إني لما أنزلت إلي من خير فقير. Okay, this I have to sort of touch on, right? So he goes and he ends up getting water for them, and he sort of gives their livestock something to drink. And then he goes to a tree after doing that, right? And this is like, picture this, right? He just come from a long, long journey through the desert, traversed all this distance, right? And Madian was in like the Levant, and Egypt is all the way in Egypt, right? It's a long, long distance, travel through the Sinai Peninsula, all that jazz. And he finally makes it to this place, to this well, where he's thinking, let me get a drink as well. Let me, you know, find some respite from this long, long journey. And he goes to the shade under a tree. فقال ربي إني لما أنزلت إلي من خير فقير. And he says, Ya Allah, for whatever you have sent down to me in terms of goodness and provision, I am in dire need of that. And whatever you're supposed to be sending down to me, whatever you have in store for me of my provisions in life, I am in so much need of that right now that I've never been in any need before. So one of the two women came up to Musa alayhi salam while he was in this situation and making this dua, right? He's calling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help. He's desperate for help. And his desperation shows in his dua, right? He's faqir, he's poor, he's impoverished. He needs what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided in store for him. فجاءته إحداهما تمشي على استحياء قالت إن أبي يدعوك ليجزيك أجر ما سقيت لنا. That she comes up to him, and she comes up to him in all bashfulness and shyness. That, look, excuse me, Musa, our father is inviting you over to our house because he wishes to thank you for the favor that you've done for us. So he goes to his house, وقص عليه القصص, and he tells him his story. This is what happened to me. This is what happened to me in Egypt, and this is how I've got to the point where I'm at now. So he says, don't worry. نجوت من القوم الظالمين. You are free from the disbelieving people, or from the oppressors. And so one of them says, Ya abati, take him on as a servant, hire him, give him a job. Inna khayra man ista'jarta al-qawi wal-amin. The best of who you can give a job to is the one who is truthful, because there was truth in his story, and his story really affected them deeply in their hearts. And he is also strong. He was able to traverse that whole distance, and that shows his strength. And he was able to give us the water that we couldn't get. قال إني أريد أن أنكحك إحدى ابنتي هاتين. So he went up to Musa and he said, look, I want you to marry one of my two daughters, right? Choose whichever one you want to marry. On the condition that you work for me for 8 years. فإن أتممت عشرا فمن عندك. And if you wish to finish complete a 10-year period, that is for you. So 8 years is the agreement between me and you, and 10 years if you wish, right? Another trigger for you guys: which of the two did Musa alayhi salam complete? Did he do 8 years, or did he end up completing the 10 years? وما أريد أن أشق عليك, and I do not want hardship for you. ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصالحين. You would find me verily of those who are, good bosses. I'm a good employer. قال ذلك بيني وبينك أيما الأجلين قضيت فلا عدوان علي والله على ما نقول وكيل. That whatever we have said to each other, that is between us. This is an agreement between us, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is witness over it, and so on and so forth. So check out, look what's happened to him, right? Musa alayhi salam just come from this journey, just had a drink, right? A really tired, really poor, makes this dua of poverty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And immediately that very same day, he is married, he is given a job, and he is given a home to live in, right? With with Shu'aib and his daughters. Subhanallah. The blessings in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives, and the way in which he gives are, what can you say about them? Subhanallah. All right, I'm conscious of the time, and I can see Maghrib fast approaching. So let's pause here in the story. I know we're nowhere near to the point where I wanted to reach, unfortunately. But let's stop there, inshallah, and then we'll try and pick it up tomorrow, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, with the rest of Surah Al-Qasas, a little bit of Ankabut, inshallah, and then we'll go on to part number 21, inshallah ta'ala. We'll change tack a little bit as well, where we'll summarize a lot more, and I think I'll stop expounding on some of these stories, inshallah ta'ala, because of the detail and because of the time as well. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the ability to benefit from all that has been said, and inshallah inspire us through the Qur'an to reconnect with it and reconnect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through it. Ameen, ameen. Jazakumullahu khairah. I wonder if I can take a quick question. Okay, I think I'll leave the questions inshallah until tomorrow bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So jazakumullahu khair to you guys for taking part. Alhamdulillah, a lot of love, mashallah. I very much enjoy you guys being part of this, inshallah. So please remember me also in your du'as that you are about to recite, inshallah ta'ala. And I hope to see you guys all tomorrow, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Jazakumullahu khaira. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.